There is an ending you were never shown. For years, a children's cartoon aired on Saturday mornings. Bright colors, simple lessons, a friendly old wizard. A group of kids lost in a magic world, always fighting, always almost going home. But never quite. The show stopped. No final episode. No goodbye. The story just vanished. But there was an ending written. A dark one. Too dark for television. A story about fear, sacrifice, and a terrible truth hiding behind a kind old man's smile. Today, I am going to tell you that story. Not the version they showed you as a child. The version they hid from you. This is the tale of 6 young heroes trapped between worlds. And the last gate home. Stay with me. It gets dark. Long ago, 6 children rode a strange ride at a fair. The ride was old. The lights were too bright. The man who ran it smiled in a way that made no sense. Then the world spun and did not stop spinning until it broke apart completely. When the spinning ended, the children were not at the fair anymore. They stood in a land of tall red mountains and dead grey trees. The sky had 2 colors at once, like it could not decide between day and night. Somewhere far away, something huge was breathing. They could hear it dot in dot out. Like the whole world had lungs. They called this place the realm. At first, it felt like an adventure. A game come to life. Each of them was given a weapon that matched something true about who they were. The oldest boy received a bow that never missed because he carried the weight of always trying to protect everyone, even when no one asked him to. The tallest boy, who joked more than he should, received a shield because deep down, he was always trying to protect himself from being hurt. The proud girl received twin blades of light, sharp and fast, because her anger needed somewhere to go. The smallest boy, the youngest of them all, received a huge club, far too heavy for a child his size, because he had to grow up faster than anyone should. The quiet girl received a magic cloak that could turn her invisible, because she had always felt unseen, even before she came to this world. And the boy with glasses, the one who read more books than he lived life, received an old hat full of magic tricks that rarely worked the way he wanted, because he did not yet believe in his own power. They also had a small companion, a baby unicorn, soft and stubborn, who followed them everywhere and loved them without asking for anything back. In a world full of monsters, the little unicorn was the one soft thing they had left. And they had a guide. An old, small man appeared before them on that first day. He wore a brown cloak. He carried a wooden staff taller than himself. His voice was warm, like a grandfather's. He called himself the guide of lost travelers. He told them there was only one way home. They had to find it themselves, and he could only point, never carry them there. The children did not trust him at first. Who would? A stranger, appearing from nowhere, offering help in a world that wanted to kill them. But over time, in dark places with no other light, his calm voice became the only thing that made sense. They started to believe in him. They needed to believe in him. Without him, they were only 6 lost children in a world built to eat them alive. Years passed in the realm. Real years. Not a single episode of a Saturday morning show. Real seasons, real winters, real days where they went hungry, real nights where they cried quietly so that others would not hear. They grew taller. Their voices changed. Their eyes changed too, not older in years, but older in weight. They had seen things children should never see. They had made choices no child should have to make. And through all of it, one shadow followed them again and again, like a nightmare that refused to end. He rode on a black horse with eyes like dying stars. His armor was the color of old blood. Half his face was calm and cold, the other half burned with a fire that never went out. He was a warrior of great and terrible power, and every single time the children came close to finding a way home, he was there to close the door before they could walk through it. They called him the enemy. But he had a name, and the name was Wenger. For the longest time, the children believed Wenger was simply evil, a monster in a man's shape, someone born only to hurt them. It was easier to believe that. It is always easier to believe your enemy is only darkness, because then you never have to ask why. But nothing in the realm was ever that simple. There came a night, deep in a frozen valley, when the group found an old ruin, a temple built long before the realm had a name. Inside, carved into the stone walls, were pictures. Old pictures, faded by time, and in those pictures, they saw something that changed everything. They saw their guide younger, standing beside a boy with the same burning eyes as Wenger. They were brothers, not by blood, but by something older, bound together by a duty neither of them had chosen. Long before the children ever fell into this world, the guide and the boy, who would become Wenger, had both served the same terrible power, a power that slept far beneath the mountains, chained by old magic, waiting for the day the chains would break. A dragon, not one head, but 5. Each head a different color, each head a different kind of cruelty. The people of the old world had given her a name whispered only in fear: Tiamat. Long ago, the guide and the one who became Wenger had both been chosen to guard the chains that held her. Two brothers, two halves of one duty. But duty is heavy, and not every heart carries the same weight the same way. The guide chose to spend his life quietly, guiding lost travelers, keeping their hope alive, keeping them far from the mountain where Tiamat slept. A slow, patient kind of guarding. But the one who became Wenger grew tired of guarding a monster who never woke. He grew hungry for power of his own. He believed that if he could not defeat Tiamat, he should rule beside her instead. So he broke his half of the old vow. He sought out dark magic. He let his heart burn until there was almost nothing kind left inside it. And in doing so, he became something the realm had never seen before, a bridge between men and monsters, neither fully one nor the other. The guide never stopped loving his brother. That was the saddest truth of all. Even after everything, even after every battle, every scar, every child Wenger had put in danger, the old man's heart still ached for the boy he once knew. This truth changed the children forever. The oldest boy, who carried protection like a heavy stone on his back, finally understood something important. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most are not born broken. They are made broken, slowly, by choices, by pain, by loneliness no one ever noticed in time. Understanding that did not mean forgiving Wenger. It meant understanding him, and understanding an enemy is far more dangerous and far more human than simply hating him. The proud girl with the twin blades had always fought with anger, because anger was easier to hold than fear. But now she began to ask herself a harder question. What happens to a warrior who wins every battle but never learns anything from them? She began to fight differently after that night. Not with less strength, but with more purpose. The boy with the shield, the one who always joked to hide his fear, realized that Wenger too was hiding behind something. A mask of fire and anger, built to cover something softer underneath. If even a monster like Wenger could be hiding around, then maybe it was not so shameful for a scared boy to admit he was scared too. The youngest boy, who had grown up too fast, learned the opposite lesson, that strength is not about hiding your fear behind muscle. It is about carrying fear honestly and moving forward anyway. The quiet girl, who always felt invisible, felt something shift inside her. She understood, more than any of the others, what it meant to be shaped by loneliness. She looked at Wenger's story and did not see a monster. She saw a warning. A reminder of what loneliness can grow into if no one reaches out in time. And the boy with the magic hat, the one who never trusted his own power, understood something quietly important. Magic, like anger, like fear, like love, is not good or evil by itself. It becomes whatever the heart behind it chooses to make of it. They left that frozen temple different than when they entered it, heavier, wiser. And afraid, because now they understood exactly what they were truly facing. Not simply a villain. A warning of what any one of them could become if their hearts grew too heavy, too lonely, too tired, for too long. From that night forward, the journey changed. It stopped being only about finding the way home. It became about staying whole while searching for it. The realm sensed the shift too, as if the land itself knew the children were getting closer to a truth it did not want revealed. The trials grew harder. The nights grew longer. And every one of them began to face the thing they feared most, not as a monster to defeat with a sword, but as a shadow living quietly inside themselves. The oldest boy, the one who carried everyone, wandered one evening into a canyon filled with fog, searching for firewood. In the fog, he saw them, his friends, lying broken on the ground, because he had failed to protect them one time too many. He knew, somewhere deep down, that it was not real. But it felt real. It felt like a punishment he had been waiting for his whole time in the realm. He stood frozen for a long, long moment, staring at a nightmare built entirely from his own guilt. It was the smallest, youngest boy who found him there, shaking, and instead of asking what was wrong, the boy simply sat beside him in the fog and said, quietly, "You don't have to carry all of us by yourself. That's not what being strong means." The fog cleared slowly after that. Not because the fear disappeared completely, fear like that rarely disappears completely, but because, for the first time, the oldest boy let someone else carry a little of the weight with him. The proud girl faced her fear in a hall of mirrors, deep beneath a ruined castle. Every mirror showed her a different version of herself, weak, crying, begging for help, the opposite of everything she had built herself to be since arriving in the realm. She wanted to smash every single mirror. Instead, she made herself stand still and look. Really look. And she realized something the mirrors were trying, in their twisted way, to teach her, that needing help was not weakness. Hiding that need, that was the weakness that could break her one day when she least expected it. The boy with the shield faced a room that simply asked him, over and over, in 100 different cruel voices, why anyone would choose to stay by his side. Old memories of being laughed at, being left out, being the funny one nobody took seriously, all of it came rushing back at once. He wanted to run, to joke his way out of the room like he joked his way out of everything. Instead, this time, he stayed. He listened to every cruel voice until they had nothing new left to say. And when the room finally went silent, He understood that the friends who had stayed with him through years of danger were not staying out of pity. They were staying because he mattered. He simply had never let himself believe it before. The quiet girl walked into a room that was completely empty, no monsters, no mirrors, nothing at all. Just silence and darkness, exactly the way she always feared she would end up, forgotten, alone, invisible to the whole world. But this time, in the silence, she did something she rarely allowed herself to do. She spoke. Out loud, to no one. She said everything she had never said to the others, her fears, her doubts, her quiet hope that she mattered to someone. The room did not answer. But when she stepped back outside, her friends were standing there, waiting for her word, because they had noticed she was gone. In that small moment, invisible finally stopped feeling true. The boy with the magic hat faced perhaps the cruelest trial of all, a version of himself, standing across a broken bridge, holding the same hat, laughing at him. "You'll never be good enough with this," the copy said. "You'll always be the one who slows everyone down." For years, that voice had lived quietly in the back of his mind. Hearing it out loud almost broke him. But instead of running, he reached into the hat one final time, not hoping for a powerful spell, but simply hoping for courage. What came out was small, barely more than a spark of light. But it was enough to knock his doubting reflection off the bridge and into nothing. Small magic, chosen bravely, mattered more than powerful magic used out of fear. One by one, the 6 of them faced the versions of themselves they were most afraid of becoming. And one by one, they chose, quietly, without any grand speech or celebration, to keep moving forward anyway. This, the old guide told them later, sitting by a small fire under a broken sky, was always the true test of the realm. Not the monsters. Not the battles. The mirror each person carries inside themselves. "The realm does not trap you because it wants to hurt you," he said, his voice softer than they had ever heard it. "It traps you until you are ready to face what waits at the end." Home is not simply a place. For some travelers, home is a door that only opens once your heart is ready to walk through it. The children were quiet after he said that, because they understood, finally, why the door home had never appeared before now. It was not hidden by magic alone. It had been waiting for them to become people capable of walking through it without leaving pieces of themselves behind. But peace never lasted long in the realm, and on the very night they began to feel a small flicker of hope, the sky above the mountains turned the color of blood. Thinger had grown tired of waiting. For years, he had circled the children, testing them, delaying them, almost, though none of them would admit it, almost protecting them from discovering the full truth too soon. But something had changed in him too. Whether it was jealousy of his brother's patience, or simple hunger for power finally reaching its peak, Wenger made his choice. He rode to the mountain where Tiamat slept, and instead of guarding her chains, he began to break them. The ground shook across the entire realm that night. Rivers changed direction. Old trees fell without wind to push them. And deep beneath the red mountains, something ancient began, slowly, to wake. The old guide's face turned pale when he felt it. For the first time since the children had known him, he looked afraid. "He's doing it," the guide whispered. "He's actually doing it." "Doing what?" the oldest boy asked. Though part of him already feared the answer. "Freeing her," the guide said. "My brother believes that if he frees Tiamat himself, he can control her, bond with her power before she fully wakes. He believes it will make him strong enough to finally win against everything, against me, against fate, against the loneliness he's carried for far too long. And if he's wrong? The proud girl asked. The old guide looked at each of them, one at a time, his eyes heavy with centuries of memory. Then nothing in this realm survives what wakes beneath that mountain. Not Wenger. Not this land. And not you. There was no more time for trials after that. No more quiet lessons by firelight. The final journey had begun, and every one of them knew, without needing to say it aloud, that this was the battle the entire realm had been building towards since the moment they first arrived. They traveled for 3 days straight toward the mountain, resting only when their bodies gave them no choice. The little unicorn stayed closed the entire way, sensing, the way animals often do, that something enormous and dangerous was waiting ahead. On the second night, it pressed itself against the youngest boy while he slept, as if trying to protect him even in dreams. On the third night, they reached the base of the mountain. The air itself felt wrong there, heavy, hot, and cold at the same time, like the world could not decide what it wanted to become. Cracks glowed faintly in the stone, deep red light leaking from somewhere far below, like the mountain had a wound that refused to heal. The old guide stopped at the entrance to a massive cave carved into the rock. "This is as far as guidance can take you," he said. "From here, you must choose your own path. I can go no further, not because I am forbidden, but because if I face my brother now, I fear I will not be strong enough to stop what he has become. You 6. You are stronger together than I ever was alone." The children looked at each other. Fear was there, plain and honest on every face. But something else was there too, something that had grown slowly across years of trials, loss, and small quiet victories. Trust, not blind trust. And trust, built one hard moment at a time. "We're not doing this because we're not scared," the oldest boy said quietly, more to his friends than to the guide. "We're doing it because we're scared together." "That's different." They stepped into the mountain. The tunnels twisted downward for what felt like hours, lit only by the strange red glow bleeding through the cracked stone. Somewhere ahead, they could hear it again, the breathing. Slower now, deeper. Closer to waking than it had ever been. They found Wenger standing before an enormous chamber, where 5 massive chains, each thicker than a tree trunk, stretched down into darkness, so deep it seemed to have no bottom. 3 of the 5 chains had already snapped. He turned to face them, and for a moment, just a moment, something flickered across his burning eyes that looked almost like sadness. "You shouldn't have come," he said. His voice was quieter than usual. Less like a monster, more like someone standing at the edge of a choice he could no longer take back. "There's nothing left for children to save here." "We're not children anymore," the proud girl said, stepping forward, her twin blades catching the red light. "Not after everything this place made us become." "Then you understand," Wenger said, "why I have to finish this. I have spent longer than you can imagine, guarding a monster for a world that never once thanked me. My brother chose patience. I choose power. At least power cannot abandon you. Power abandoned you a long time ago," the old guide's voice echoed from behind the children. "He had followed them after all. It just took your loneliness and wore its shape instead." Wenger's expression hardened. Whatever's softness had been there a moment ago disappeared, buried again beneath years of anger. "Then I suppose," he said, raising his sword, "we finish this the way we always do." The fourth chain snapped as the battle began. What followed was not simply a fight of swords and spells, though there were plenty of both. Flashes of light crossing the dark chamber, the ring of steel against steel echoing off ancient stone. It was, more truly, 6 years of growth finally being tested all at once. The oldest boy no longer fought like someone trying to protect everyone by himself. He fought as part of a team, calling out warnings, trusting his friends to cover the places he could not reach alone. His arrows found their mark not through desperation, but through the calm, practiced focus of someone who had finally learned that leadership means trusting others, not controlling everything. The proud girl fought with controlled strength now, not blind anger. Every strike had purpose. When Wenger's dark soldiers surrounded her, she did not simply cut them down, she moved like water, protecting the smaller members of the group without ever needing to be asked. The boy with the shield stood at the front lines, no longer using jokes as armor, but standing firm, physically and honestly, in front of anyone who needed shelter from the chaos. For the first time, his courage came without a mask. The youngest boy swung his heavy club with the strength of someone who had finally accepted his place among the group, not as the baby who needed protecting, but as a true and trusted piece of the team. The quiet girl moved unseen through the shadows of the chamber, no longer invisible because she felt forgotten, but because she had learned to use her gift with confident purpose, striking exactly when and where she was needed most. And the boy with the magic hat, the one who never trusted his own power, reached inside it one final time as the fifth chain ground under enormous pressure, threatening to snap completely and release Tiamat fully into the world. He did not pull out a powerful spell. He pulled out something smaller, but far more important, a plan. The chains aren't just holding her back, he shouted over the chaos. They're the only thing keeping her power contained. If Wenger breaks the last one now, there won't be anything left to fight, she'll just be too strong. Then we don't let him break it, the oldest boy called back, already moving. What happened next was not a moment of overwhelming power or a single lucky strike. It was teamwork, built from years of shared trials, finally paying off exactly when it mattered most. While the others held off Wenger's dark soldiers, the boy with the shield and the youngest boy worked together to physically block Wenger's path to the final chain. Standing side by side despite the danger, refusing to move. The proud girl and the oldest boy fought Wenger directly, not to defeat him completely. They both, somewhere deep down, still hoped that was not necessary, but to slow him, to give the others time. And the quiet girl, invisible, moved close enough to Wenger's dark blade to do something no one expected. She did not attack him. She reached out and touched his arm, gently, the same way she wished, so many times, that someone had reached out to her during her loneliest nights in the realm. "You don't have to do this," she said softly, appearing suddenly beside him, her voice cutting through the chaos of battle. "We know why you're like this. We know you're not just evil. You're just tired of being alone." For one long, terrible moment, everything in the chamber seemed to stop. Wenger stared at her, his sword still raised, his breathing heavy. Something in his burning eyes cracked, not broke completely, but cracked, like ice beginning to give way beneath old, heavy weight. "You don't know anything about me," he said, but his voice shook this time. There was no strength left in the words. "I know you kept coming back," she said. "Every single time we got close to a way home, you were there. But you never actually destroyed us, Wenger. Not once, in all these years, even when you could have. Some part of you didn't want to. The final chain groaned, cracking further under the pressure of the awakening dragon beneath them. Time was running out. But in that small, strange pause, something shifted in Wenger that no sword had managed to touch in years. The old guide stepped forward then, closer to his brother than he had come in a very long time. "I never stopped believing there was still something good buried in you," he said quietly. "Even after everything, please, let this end here. Not with more chains breaking, with you." Choosing, finally, to put the sword down, Wenger looked between his brother, the frightened but determined children standing before him, and the massive chain trembling under the weight of an ancient monster desperate to be free. And in the end, it was not a battle that stopped him. It was the simple, quiet truth that, for the very first time in longer than he could remember, someone had looked at the monster he had become and still chosen to see the person underneath. He lowered his sword. The final chain, weakened but not yet broken, held, just barely, as Wenger stepped back from it, breathing hard. His eyes wet with something that looked dangerously close to tears he refused to let fall. "This doesn't erase what I've done," he said quietly. "No," the old guide agreed. "But it's a beginning. And beginnings matter more than most people realize." But the realm was never a place that allowed peace to come easily. Even as the chamber settled, even as the group allowed themselves one single breath of relief, a deep and terrible sound rumbled from far below, a sound like the whole world groaning in pain. The chains, weakened by years of struggle and the damage already done, could not hold forever. Not now, not after everything that had already been broken. The fifth chain snapped on its own. The chamber shook violently as an enormous shape began rising from the darkness below. 5 long necks, 5 terrible heads, each a different, furious color. Each with eyes burning like small dying suns. Tiamat had waited centuries for this moment, and no sudden change of heart from one guardian could stop what years of broken chains had already set into motion. "Run," the old guide shouted, pushing the children back toward the tunnel entrance. "This is beyond what any of us can fight with swords alone." But running was not so simple in a mountain built entirely from twisting tunnels and collapsing stone. Rocks fell from the ceiling. The ground cracked beneath their feet. And Tiamat's massive form began pulling itself fully out of the deep chasm, filling the chamber with a suffocating heat and the smell of old, ancient danger. It was the youngest boy who saw it first, a narrow crack in the chamber wall, glowing faintly with a soft, different kind of light. Not the harsh red of the mountain's danger, but something calmer, warmer, familiar, somehow, though none of them could explain why. "There!" he shouted. I think that might be it." The old guide's eyes widened as he looked toward the light. "The gate," he whispered. "It's finally here. You've earned it. All of you." But happiness lasted only a heartbeat before Tiamat's massive form blocked their path completely. 5 heads turning slowly toward the small group of children standing between her and the tunnel that led towards salvation. There was no way around her, no time to think of a clever plan, only a terrible choice standing directly in front of them. It was the oldest boy who stepped forward first, his bow raised, though even he understood, deep down, that no arrow alone could stop something so ancient and enormous. "We didn't come this far," he said, more to himself than to anyone else, "to stop now. But this final battle was never going to be won with weapons alone. Not against a creature built from raw, ancient power. It would be one, if it could be one at all, the same way every trial before it had been won. Together, the proud girl stepped up beside him, blades ready. The boy with the shield placed himself in front of the smallest members of the group without hesitation. The quiet girl moved into position where her gift could be used most wisely. And the boy with the magic hat, trembling but determined, reached deep inside it one final, desperate time. What came out was not a weapon. It was light. Warm, golden light, the same calm color as the gate glowing behind Tiamat's enormous body, light built not from powerful, ancient magic, but from 6 years of courage, friendship, fear faced honestly, and lessons learned the hardest way possible. The light did not destroy Tiamat. Nothing so small ever could. But it startled her, confused her ancient senses, giving the small group one single, precious moment of opportunity. The old guide raised his staff high, his voice booming with a strength none of the children had ever heard from him before. Enough, he shouted, and the entire mountain seemed to shudder in response. You have taken enough. Return to your rest, and trouble this realm no further. It was not victory, not truly. Tiamat was far too ancient, far too powerful, to be defeated by any single spell or any single guardian's plea. But the combination of the light, the guide's ancient authority, and something else, something Wenger provided in the final moment, stepping forward at last and adding his own broken, weary magic to his brothers, was enough. Enough to weaken her. Enough to force her back into the darkness below, snarling in fury, her chains reforming, weaker now, but holding, for now, for long enough. The mountain stopped shaking. Silence fell across the chamber, broken only by heavy breathing and the soft, steady glow of the gate, still waiting patiently behind where Tiamat had stood. They had survived. The children stood together in the settling dust, staring at the golden light glowing gently ahead of them, the way home, finally, truly within reach after years of searching, fighting, and growing into people none of them had expected to become. But before they could step toward it, the old guide spoke one final time, his voice heavy with something between sadness and pride. This gate, he said, only opens once. And once you walk through it, you cannot return to the realm. Whatever unfinished business you feel here, it stays here. The children looked at each other, and then, slowly, at Wenger, standing quietly apart from them, his sword lowered, his burning eyes softer now than they had ever seen them. What happens to you? The quiet girl asked him gently. Wenger was silent for a long moment. I stay, he said finally. There is still a debt I owe this realm. A brother I owe an apology longer than any of you could imagine. Perhaps that is where my own journey home truly begins. Not through a gate. Through changing who I choose to be, one difficult day at a time. The old guide placed a hand gently on his brother's shoulder, the first true, honest touch of kindness between them in longer than either could remember. Then let it begin now, he said softly. The children turned toward the gate one final time. Behind them lay years of fear, loss, laughter, and hard-earned wisdom. Ahead of them lay the simple, ordinary world they had left behind, a world that, after everything, would never feel quite the same again. Because they themselves were no longer the same children who had once ridden a strange, spinning ride at a forgotten fair. The oldest boy looked back at the old guide one last time. Will we remember this? He asked. Really remember it? Or will it just fade, like a dream people forget when they wake up. The old guide smiled, warm and tired and proud all at once. That, he said, depends entirely on you. Some lessons are too important to simply forget. It is up to each of you now to carry them forward into whatever life waits for you next. One by one, they stepped toward the golden light. The proud girl first, her blades lowered, her anger finally settled into something calmer and stronger. The boy with the shield next, standing tall, without a joke to hide behind. The youngest boy, no longer needing to prove he belonged, simply walking forward with quiet confidence. The quiet girl, glancing back one final time, no longer afraid of being forgotten, because she finally understood she never truly had been. The boy with the magic hat, holding it a little more firmly now, trusting, at last, in the power he carried inside himself all along. And the oldest boy last of them all, taking one final look at the strange, dangerous, beautiful world that had shaped him into someone far stronger than the boy who had first arrived here. Years ago, afraid and lost. The little unicorn stayed close beside them until the very last moment, nuzzling against each of them in turn, before stepping back, staying behind in the only home it had ever truly known. The light grew brighter, and then, quietly, without dramatic fireworks or grand celebration, the six of them stepped through the gate together, leaving behind a realm forever changed by their courage and carrying forward into whatever world waited beyond. The hardest and most important lesson the realm had ever taught them. That the greatest monsters we face are rarely the ones roaring in the darkness ahead of us. They are the quiet fears we carry inside ourselves. And the only way home has always been through facing them together. And the oldest boy, looking back one last time with a quiet smile, stepped into the light, ready to lead them all back home.